So we can start. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायिने कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूप स्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्थेषु भिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदयादिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, chapter 31, verse number 18. So these are instructions of Sri Narada to the sons of Prachin Barhi, the Prachetas. And in the previous verses we studied how he explained that one should only worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, because any action which one performs with one's body, mind, speech, if it is not for the sake of God, for the sake of Lord Krishna, then it has no meaning in the ultimate sense. Because everything else is temporary, including our body, mind and senses. So he said, whether one performs tapasya or studies Vedas, becomes a great scholar, great preacher, or studies Sankhya, becomes a great yogi, if one is not a devotee of the Lord, then it is futile. It has no sense. Because the ultimate limit of every action we perform is satisfaction of the self. Body is not our real nature, body is not our real identity. Just as you drive a car, in the car you sit yourself, and if you only put diesel or petrol in the car and you don't eat food yourself, then after some time you are hungry and you are unhappy, no matter how nice the car may be. So body is like a vehicle for us, for the Atma, and the only food body needs is devotion to God, love for God. Anything else is, the Atma needs. Everything else we do is for the body. So therefore he says that Shreyasam api sarvesham Atma hi avdhir arthata. That the limit of every beneficial activity is Atma. Ultimately, it is for Atma that we do actions. Although when we misidentify with the body, then we are trying to satisfy the body. And the Atma has its source in God. Mamaivanso Jeev Bhute Jiva Loke Sanatana. Krishna says that the Jivas are my parts. So ultimate satisfaction comes only by pleasing Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, nothing else. Therefore he said that just like pouring water at the root of tree satisfies everything, the fruits, flowers, branches, leaves, in the same way by worshipping Krishna, everything becomes satisfied. And then he gave more logic about it. So then the question came that if he is the source of everything, then how is it that he does not undergo change because the world is changing? Because we see that if something is the cause, then cause changes into effect. If you take gold and make a golden ring, then gold has changed its shape. So why is that God is not changing? Because the world is always changing. So he gave an example that just as there is sun, and because of sun there is rain, there is light, there is darkness, there are clouds, there is snowfall, but all these things don't influence the sun. So in the same way he is not influenced by anything. And now he speaks the next verse. He says, Tenaikatma namas ashesha dehinam kalam pradhanam purusham paresham svate sadhvasta guna pravaham atmaika bhavena bhajadvamadha. So this is his instruction. Again he is repeating. He says, therefore, he being the cause of everything, Atmanam ashesha dehinam, and he is the Atma of every living being. So just as in this body we have Atma, the soul, and soul is the most important thing in the body. Because if soul is out of the body, then body is dysfunctional. It will deteriorate. So in the same way, Krishna, he is the Atma of all the Atmas. That means without Krishna, Atma has no meaning. And that's why living beings are suffering in this world, because they have forgotten, or they are in forgetfulness of their original source. Bhayam ditiya abhiniveshtasya ishadapetasya vipariyasmati. So ishadapetasya, being away from God, vipariyasmriti, being in forgetfulness of God, then we suffer. Then we are full of fear. Everything causes fear to us. Even those people whom we trust, some fear from them also. So for solution for that is that we have to worship the Lord, who is the Atma of Ashesh Dehinam. And he is the Kala, he is the time. Pradhanam, he is the material cause of everything. So, because the changes are happening in time, time is one of the cause behind every action. Nothing happens without time. Whatever we do, that happens in time, and the result also comes in time. It does not come immediately. Sometimes immediately, sometimes not. So that depends on time. And Purusham Paresham is the Purusha, or the source of the Purusha. Paresham is the supreme. and Swatejasa Dvasta Guna Pravaha. By his own internal power, his natural power, he is not influenced by the gunas of the Prakriti, the material nature. So this is his special potency. Usually when somebody is a cause of something, then he or she becomes influenced by the effect. But God is the one who creates universe, and he is both the nimitta cause and the upadan cause. He is the efficient and the material cause simultaneously, which is also a rare phenomenon. And yet he is not influenced by any of the changes happening in the material world. Why? Because of Swatejasa, by his own prowess. Therefore he says, Atmaika bhavena bhajadva madha, that certainly, without any delay, just worship that Lord by complete devotion. Atmaika bhavena. So without dividing our devotion to so many things, because we may also devote ourselves to our family, our job, our nation, or other relations. So this should be all directed towards the Lord. Ya priti ra vivekanam vishesvana payani tvam anusmarta natha idyam maap sarpato. Prahlad Maharaj, he prayed to the Lord that just as the materialistic people, they have attachment for sense pleasures, unending attachment. They never give it up. So he says that in the same way, I should always remember you. Means unending, undeviating. So this is the instruction given by Narada to the sons of Prachindari. So Sri Vishnath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments, Tena sarva karanatvena hetuna. So why we have to worship the Lord? Because he is the ultimate cause of everything. Means no result comes without him. Therefore in Bhagavad Gita also he says, Karmanyeva adhikarastu ma phaleshu kadachana. That you have your duty to perform your action, but not the result. We usually think other way around, that I want the result without doing anything. So that is the root cause of corruption. Krishna is giving the formula how to uproot corruption, not by Lokpal bill. You can make Lokpal or this or that, corruption will still remain unless people realize this simple verse of Bhagavad Gita, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Because the result is not in our hands. We can perform action, but result is given by God. Although sometimes it looks like that result is in my control. That is, he makes you feel like that. Otherwise you may become depressed that I work and somebody else is giving the result. So just as when you work in an office, you work, but the salary is given by the company or corporation or whatever. That's not in your hand. If they decide not to give you, you cannot do anything, go to court. It is another thing that now you try to fight. But it's not in your hand. It's not in your control. They can also give you pink slip. In America they have pink slip, I don't know what they have in Europe. When they want to fire somebody, they give you pink slip. So that means next day don't come. So you can be fired anytime. It's not in your control. So Krishna is also saying the same thing, that it's not in your control, you can get pink slip anytime. But mostly he makes us feel as if I do my work and I get the result. I cook something, it gets cooked. Where is Krishna involved in that? Right? I make music, I don't see any Krishna. I have my shop, I sell things, I make profit, where is God? So he makes us feel like that. He's little bit tricky, that when he comes to this material world, he works as if he is under the control of the matter, although he is not. So he is called here as Swatejasad Bhasta Guna Pravaha, or as he says that he is Sarva Karanatva, he is the cause of everything, or he is the ultimate cause. Because Kalo, Tena Hetuna Kalo Nimittam, he is time. You ask scientists, what is time? Cannot say anything. It's very difficult. Ask anybody, what is time? You must see the watch and tell you the time. But what is actually time? No answer. So time is a manifestation of God's energy. That's why he said here. It's Bhagavatam which describes time. So this is the nimitta kala. There are two types of causes. When something happens, one is the material cause, or the ingredients which make the thing. And there are some other causes which don't become part of the object, but they are needed. So when you cook something, the raw material which you use for cooking, that is the material cause. And you are the nimitta cause. You don't become part of the food. So time is also like that. Time does not enter into anything, but without time it won't happen. So when the world comes to an end, it remains there for a long time. There is no creation. Only when Lord throws the time energy onto the unmanifest matter, then it starts acting. Because every action happens in time. You cannot think of an action without time. So that is Kala is time. Kala Asmi. Krishna says, time I am in Bhagavad Gita. So it is the Nimittam and Pradhanam Upadanam. And the next which is mentioned here is Pradhan, which is the unmanifest state of matter, also called Prakriti. That is the Upadan, or the material cause. Purushaha Karta. And he is the Karta, he is the agent behind everything. So without that, without his presence, nothing is possible. Etat triyatmakatvat sarvakaranam paramesham. So because of these three, he is the Paresha. So now you see why he is called the Supreme Controller. Isha also means controller, because he is the cause. He is the time, he is the material nature, and he is the agency. This power of action which we have, that we can act, this is also coming from him. Otherwise people become paralyzed suddenly, or one side becomes paralyzed, and their senses have no energy to act. So it also comes from him. Therefore he is called Paresha. So this is the logic why we should worship God. Because one may say, why shall I worship God? So because he is the cause of your very existence. Sakshadeva bhajadvam. So worship him directly. Adha means directly. No indirect worship. That I worship Ganesh, I worship Skanda, Murugan, Swami, right? And all the Navagrahas. So that is also worship of God, but that is indirect. Avidhi purvakam. Yepi anna devata bhakta. Yente shraddhanvita tepi mameva konteya. Yejanti avidhi purvakam. That is improper or roundabout way. So therefore he says that we worship directly. Hotline. Straight. Tad bhajne neva deva pitradi sarva bhajanam bhavet. And by worshipping him, then worship of everything else is done. Whether they are devas or the pitris or anybody else. So even if one has to do pitri yagya or dev yagya, it should be done for the satisfaction of him only. Iti atmana manasa ek bhavena. So how it has to be worshipped? Real worship is through the mind. So we can use our body, but mind should be there. So it is difficult to engage the mind, therefore we start with the body. Do some physical service, sweep the temple, make garland, do the puja. But that is good. Real thing is that your mind should be focused on him. Atma ek bhavena. Ek bhavena means with complete attention. Not mind wandering here and there. Or you are doing your meditation and the mind is running somewhere else. And that happens. So, manasa ekagrena iti va. Atmano yo bhavantara mishra bhavo dasa dinam ek taraste niti sandharma. And Jiva Goswami gives another meaning to this ek bhava. He says ek bhava means only one bhava. Means one relationship with God. Because sometimes people have different type of ideas. Tomeva mata cha pita tomeva. You are my mother, you are my father. So first decide whether God is mother or God is father. Tomeva bandhu, you are my friend. Sakha tomeva. So this is little bit of confusing statement. So Jiva Goswami says that have one relationship. Either accept him as father or mother, that is, or a friend, or a master, or a lover, whatever. But have one only, one relation. Not all types of relations. So that is, he says, don't mix it with another bhava. Bhavantar amishra, unmixed. Dasyadinam ek taras. As a servant, as a friend, as a parent, as a lover, any of these things, but have just one. So that is the meaning of Eka Bhava. So how this worship has to be done, he gives a little explanation of that. How to satisfy the Lord. Because after all there must be some process. We are not seeing him, right? If some person is in front of you, then you can try to please that person. But if he is not visible to us, then how to please him? So Narada says that you try to please what is visible to you, considering that as God's manifestation. So you start where you stand. And this is very important principle of Vedic culture, that we have this universe. So the universe is not for our enjoyment. You begin with worship of the universe itself. That is also Virat Purusha, that is also form of God. Because he already said that he is the one who is manifest like that. So therefore Sri Narada says, Daya sarva bhuteshu santushtya yena kena va sarvendriyopashantya cha tushyatyashu janardana. Says there's Janardana. He is very quickly pleased if you are compassionate on all living beings. Daya sarva bhuteshu. Why Daya sarva bhuteshu? Not doing social welfare. This verse is not talking about social welfare. This verse is talking about worship of God. It is also not talking about Manav Seva, Madhav Seva or Daridra Narayan. No, because he already said that he is the Atma of Sarvadehinam. So seeing everyone as a manifestation of God only, then serving with the intention of pleasing God, then it becomes an act of devotion and not social welfare. If one does social welfare, then one will end up in frustration. That will not satisfy the Atma, because Atma, the self, cannot be satisfied by anything else except by pleasing the Supreme Self. So there was very amazing statement which I read about Mother Teresa, who was a very great lady and did social work all her life. But she said that she felt empty all the time inside. She felt no presence of God or anything like that. Although she is been declared as a saint by the Catholic Church. And that is because unless one is clear about this concept, the verse seems to be saying which she was doing, Daya sarva bhutesu santushtya yena kena. But this principle has to be understood because we have to see this verse in the light of what was said before. And earlier it was said very clearly that whether it is sutta or tapasya or yajna or high birth or swadhyaya or nyasa or sankhya or yoga, they are not satisfying if they are not for the Supreme Lord. So this daya has to be done not with the intention of that I am superior and I am helping this person. Rather it has to be done that this is an opportunity for me to serve God. I am a servant and here there is presence of God and I do my service. That is the meaning here, daya. Daya sarva bhuteshu and santushtya yena kenava. Now if you start being compassionate on everybody, how are you going to survive? So he says yena kenava. Just be happy whatever you have. Remain satisfied with that. Santusht. So santosh, self-satisfaction, is the greatest wealth. There are various types of wealth. You can have money, you can have land, buildings. But if you are not satisfied within yourself, all this wealth, possessions, relations cannot make you happy. So asantasya kutaha sukham. You are still unhappy. So santushtya yena kenava. Somehow or other remain satisfied and continue doing your service. And sarvendriya upashantya cha tushyati asujana. And keep your senses balanced. Not that you are all the time trying to satisfy the senses and waste all your time, energy, money for that. So then Lord is very quickly pleased. So as I have explained, that in India we had a custom that we give dan and then we give dakshina. These two separate words are used. Then there is dan and then there is dakshina. And dakshina is also dan. Dan means charity. And dakshina also giving something. So dakshina is given after giving dan, that you have taken charity from me. So you have done a favor to me by taking charity, therefore I give you dakshina now. That is dakshina. So this is a different concept of welfare than what people usually have. So usually people do social welfare, they do some charitable work, then they are proud of it. Because they think that they are doing great job, they are superior to others, they are helping others, and they are providing. So when this feeling comes, then that is not part of devotion to God. And that will also frustrate them ultimately. Because then someone else will do better than them. Then they will feel insulted. Or if they have done welfare to somebody and that person does not respect or reciprocate, then they will feel frustrated. But when you do it as a service to God, then you don't feel frustrated, you feel just happy doing it. Because devotion is unmotivated. Devotion does not give any other outcome. Devotion is the fruit of itself. If you do it as a social welfare, then you look for some other result. Somebody has to praise you, you want your name to be put on a board or a stone piece somewhere or announced. Let people know. So that means your motive is not in serving but getting that name and fame. Then it is not service, because service is unmotivated. Although the word service is also used when you do some job somewhere, I am doing service there. But originally the word service meant do something without any motivation, asking nothing in return. That is the real service. When you do service with the intention of getting something in back, in return, then it becomes a business. Because in business there is give and take. And in service there is no such deal. So that's why when Lord Nrsimhadev appeared to Prahlad Maharaj and he asked that take boon from me, and Prahlad was saying, why are you asking this? We are not businessmen. I am servant to your master, and now if you say take something from me, then it becomes like I did some service to you, you are giving the boon to me, then you go away. You have paid for my service. Right? Because I was remembering you all the time. So you have appeared, then you give me the boon, you go away. You have done your job, our business is over. So that is not bhakti, that is not devotion. That is not satisfying ultimately to God. Because Atma cannot be satisfied by business. Otherwise all the business people will be happy. Right? So the self can be satisfied, pleased, only by devotion, only by love. Because love is unmotivated. Devotion means love. When you do something out of love, you don't expect anything. You are happy when you are doing it. Love is bliss in itself. It doesn't need, everything has an outcome, but love has no outcome. If someone asks, why do you love somebody? You don't love for something. You love for the heck of it. For the love's sake. So bhakti is that. It does not have some hidden agenda, otherwise it will not be love. So in pure love, again I am using the word pure before it because now there is also impure love. People make a show of love, but it is motivated. That is business. So there can be business in the name of service. There can be business in the name of love, business in the name of bhakti. It can be business in so many ways. Otherwise, Krishna says that even when you do karma, but to speak of bhakti, that should also be niskam karma. So he says that those who are engaging in sakam karma, they are miser. Sakam karma. And bhakti, of course, is free from any motive to begin with. So daya sarvabhutesu santushtya yena kenava sarvendriya upshantya che tushyati asya. Why Lord is pleased? Lord is not pleased by social welfare. He is pleased only by bhakti. Bhaktya tushyati keshava. So na sadhyami mam yoga, na sankhya dharma uddhava. Krishna says that I am not pleased by sankhya, by yoga, by dharma, only by bhakti. So this must be bhakti. So therefore this word should not be misunderstood as if he is being propagated as social welfare. Many times this question is asked that is there any social welfare in Vaishnava Dharma? Yes, it is there, but it is of different type. It is part of devotion only. It's not a separate that you do some social work and then you do your bhakti separately. And that doesn't work. It's only part. It's not that you distribute khichdi and then do kirtan. So here, if you distribute khichdi, that also must be bhakti only. Otherwise, it is not for the satisfaction of God. You can feed millions of people. It has nothing to do with bhakti. If it is not performed with this understanding and with this intention, then it is not devotion. Then it is a materialistic activity. So, tatra anukulan kanshan dharman ahadaya. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that now he explains some actions which are favorable to that worship which was described before. And that is showing compassion. Apahata sakalaishnam amalatmanya viratamedita bhavanopahutaha nijjan vasayagatatvamatmanonyan nasarati chidravadakshana satam hi. So now he explains how God reciprocates. Because God is also a person. He is not just all-pervading consciousness. He is also a living being. He has mind, he has ego, he has his identity. So when someone worships the Lord like this, then he says that Lord, he becomes controlled by such a devotee. Nijajan vasagatatvam atmanu ayan nasarati chidravadakshara satam. He comes and becomes situated in the heart of such a devotee, and he never moves from there. Because you like to live with people who love you. Even if you can find one person who loves you without any motive, you would not like to give up that person. So God is also like that. That when he sees that this devotee does not want anything, then he gives himself. If you want something from God, then he will give you that. If you don't want anything, then he will give himself. Otherwise he will give and he will go away. This is what Nrsimhadev was trying to do to Prahlad. Prahlad was clever, he understood. He says, you think I'm a little boy, give me a toy and go away. So he says, no, I don't want. So, apahata sakala ishnam, one whose all desires are dispelled. There is no other desire in the mind except one desire, that I just want to serve God. This should be the prime desire, and all other desires should rotate around this desire. Because we will have other desires. I feel hungry, so I have desire to eat. But it should not be an independent desire. I want to make a house, I want to marry, I want to have children, I want a job. All these desires should be hung around on this one desire of serving God. That is the meaning of sakala, apahata sakala aishanam. Aishana means desires. We have desire for money, desire for house, desire for health, desire for relations. So all these desires should be under the umbrella of one desire. Otherwise all other desires will become problems and bind you to the material world. So that is called apahata sakala yashanam. Amal atmani, then the atma, the mind, is pure. Because the only impurity in the mind is desire other than devotion. Any desire which is not related to devotion, that is impurity. So there may be gross desires, there may be subtle desires, desires which are manifest, unmanifest desire, all types. So, Atmani aviratam edhita bhavanoputta. And aviratam bhavanoputta, all the time calling the Lord. Without any stop. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Kirtaniya Sadahari, always doing Kirtan of Hari. So when one does this, when one calls Lord like this, then Lord also listens. He has ears. It is very amazing that God has ears to hear. And He is not sitting beyond the clouds that you have to shout or you have to put loudspeakers. No, He is right here. He hears, and if you are sincere, then He comes to you and He never leaves. Chidravat akshara satami. So He says that He means definitely, without a doubt. Very forcefully He is saying this. Narada, of course, is speaking with his own experience. He is not just repeating somebody's words. He is a great devotee of the Lord, always doing kirtan. So he says that Akshara means Hari, Chidravat Satam Hi Na Sarati. Once the Lord knows this, God knows that this person is free of any other motives, any other desires, then he becomes controlled by that. And he does not move from there at all. Just like the sky. Akashvat, Chidravat. So just as Akash cannot move, because Akash is all pervading. Anything which is all pervading cannot move. Where will it move? There is no empty space. Space is everywhere. So where can it go? So he says just as space cannot move, the Lord does not move, means there is absolutely zero possibility that He will move from your heart. So this is the most amazing thing which can happen. This is what Bhakti gives. There is no other process which can do something like this. That one who is the creator of this whole universe, he comes to you. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, he says, Evam ukta prakarya bhaktya bhaktebhyo bhagavan swatma prado bhavati iti purvam upaditam tal lakshanam vivranoti. He says, when a person engages in bhakti as described above, then what does Lord give to such people? He says, He gives Himself. So he says, this was already spoken above. He says, Nayatra Atma Prado Hari. That Lord Hari is called Atma Prada, one who gives himself to his devotees. Also Atma Atmada Priya, one who gives himself to his lovers. So he says the same thing is now described in more detail in this verse, that how God gives Himself to His devotees. Apahata nirasta sakla yeshna kama yasmat. A person from whose mind all types of desires have taken leave. These desires have understood that this fellow is not going to work for us. Right? We get a desire in our mind, then we want to work for that desire. Desire will lead to an action. When someone becomes a devotee, he wants to work only for one desire. So these other desires which are sitting inside, they realize that he is not paying attention to us. Right? So they get frustrated. They get bored. They leave. Right? Somebody comes to your door asking some, say, food and you don't give. He's not going to sit there eternally. He will wait for a few minutes, maybe a few hours. Then he says, Chalo, polama. So there is no possibility of getting anything here. So desires are also like that. If you don't pay attention to them, they go. In the childhood we had so many desires. Where are they now? In the youth, another type of desires. So they are coming and going because these desires are just occurring inside the space of the mind. Then we start saying, this is my desire. It's not your desire, it's just happening there. It's like when we are breathing, when the air goes inside, you say, this is my breath. Oh, it's not your breath, it was outside. It will be outside soon. But you say, this is my breath. So like that desire happens in the mind, and you say, this is my desire, this is my thought. That's where the problem starts. If you neglect it, it will go away. It's like the breath comes in, it goes out. But we don't let it go, then it stays. So that becomes the cause of our suffering. If you take the breath inside and don't leave it, then what will happen? You will die. Right? Same way we hold on to these desires, we are causing our own death, spiritual death. So he says, apahata nirasta sakla yeshna kama yasna. All the kama, all the desires, they are thrown out. And sacha so amalatma manasya. Then the mind is pure. Then you will see how your mind becomes peaceful. Because every desire is a disturbance to the mind. Desires are like you vibrate the strings of guitar or sitar. So it creates sound. So these are creating sound there. Some talk is going on inside and you are not peaceful. You give them up and then see how you are peaceful. So this is the disturbance. So when these are given up, so this becomes Amalatma, pure-minded person. Yasmin satam mansi nirantaram edhitaya bhavnaya. And then what will happen? The devotion, it will grow more and more and more and more. Otherwise these desires are like the weeds, they cover the seed of bhakti. And then don't let it grow. You pour water and manure, fertilizer, the weeds are eating it up. So you have desires in your mind and you are chanting. And you are doing puja, worship, reciting slokas, prayer. All this is going to feed the desires. Desires become stronger and stronger. Then one day you leave. You say, what is this boring thing? These people all the time saying the same thing. Chanting the same mantra every day. Nothing new. Same song every day. Outside we have different songs coming, right? Everybody is bringing out new CDs. And these devotees are singing the same thing for thousands of years. So then you get bored. This is how ideas will come in the mind. So when the desires are gone, then bhakti increases. Nirantaram edhitaya bhavanaya. Then one calls out Lord with love and devotion. Hey Hare Govinda Mat Pranaika Vallabha iti ahute. Then he calls to the Lord, O Krishna, O Govinda, O my lover, my very life. You are my prana vallabha, most dear. So when you call like this, then what happens? Lord comes running. Sannidhapita san aksharo harir na sarati chidravat. So he comes and he never leaves. Tatratya akashavat, just like the akasha, the sky. Tatah sakashat naap sarati, never goes away. Kidrisham atmanam swasya svabhakta jan vasagat. Because he becomes controlled. So how can he live now? He is not independent to live. He loses his independence. Becomes the devotee of his devotee. Bhagavan Bhakt Bhaktiman. Then how can he live? Ayan janan swiyam nishtham rakshitum iti bhava. So knowing that he is controlled under the devotee, he does not live because he has to protect now his nishtha. It's like devotee has nishtha in Bhagavan. Now Bhagavan has nishtha in devotee, he will not live. This is very interesting. He says, Nij jana vas gatvam atmano ayan sarati nachindravat. He realizes this fact that now I am under the control of this guy. Cannot leave. So this is how the Lord becomes controlled by his devotees, by devotion. This is the greatness of bhakti. So we'll stop here if there is any questions.
So how to get rid of these desires? It seems like bhakti is separate from the desire.
Well, how to get rid of these desires? You have to deliberate that what will be the outcome of this desire.
So some jnana is needed here.
Yes, that's why you are reading. You have to deliberate. That what do I gain from it, ultimately?
Another thing I wanted to ask you is, you said that presence is needed when you have to think. When you do service, you have to engage your mind. But what do you mean? You have to think on Krishna, or you have to be present in what you do?
No, you have to know that what you do, it should be related to Krishna.
So that has to be a continuous meditation. While
At least
you perform the activity, you have to think, I'm doing it for Krishna.
if you can do that, that is good. But sometimes if it is not possible, because the activity itself may require absorption, you are driving, so you have to be very alert, especially in India. So then you may not be able to think like that. But at least that should be inside you. That should be your sankalpa, it should be your resolve and your determination.
To think that you are doing it for Krishna.
And only for Krishna.
You have explained that we should accept only one kind of relationship with God. How develop this relation and especially I would to know which one it is.
Well, this is given by the Guru. Relationship. Here he is only speaking that there should be one, but depending on the type of relation which Guru has, you also have the same one. Because Bhakti comes by the grace of Guru.
About this subtle difference between social work and devotional service. So basically the difference is in the intention of the person who performs the act.
The whole problem is of intention.
The whole thing is in intention.
So what we have to change is our intention. That is most important. If intention is clear, which means if intention is for service to God, then everything will fall in place. And if intention is not clear, then everything will fall apart sooner or later.
Because in that sense also everything can be utilized in the service of God. So there is nothing that we have to exclude in that. Let's say arts or helping poor people or reading knowledge or cooking or any activity can be.
Yeah, so that intention has to be kept pure. Because problem is that we have our desires which are hanging inside, and if we are not careful and aware, then they start mixing and we start then getting contaminated by that. You start something with a good intention, but you can become deviated if you are not very attentive, especially in the beginning stage.
For example, this Mother Teresa, she was devoting herself. Most probably she was thinking that she's the provider and she was helping with people like her.
Well, I don't know, but this is what I read. So obviously you have to see the outcome also.
Yeah.
And from the end result you can infer what is the cause of it. Because if the action was pure devotion, then it will not happen like that.
She will be happy, and because also energy is coming more
And the reason for this, as I feel, is that the way it is being explained here, then nowhere it is explained like that. People don't have a clear concept what is social welfare and what is devotion, or how can in devotion you can do welfare. So this is a very subtle point, very fine difference, because externally the action is same. The difference is in the intention, and that is very subtle. So unless one is trained like that, and that training is possible if somebody comes in association with people who know this. Otherwise one will never understand it. Even by reading you will not understand, because you read the verse, you read the translation, it looks, do be compassionate. The verse is not saying anywhere that you have to have this, but that is understood when you see the whole instruction, what he has said before, then suddenly he cannot talk of social welfare. He has already criticized everything else before. So how is that now he is talking about this social welfare? So this is how we have to understand. This is called Shastra Sangati. That there has to be consistency. So this is one way of understanding Shastra, by consistency. Otherwise there is a habit of taking something out of context and then using it. Look, Narada is saying this. Now it is a fact, Narada is saying it and you can translate the word and it looks like. But if you do not know under what context he is speaking and what he has said before and after, then people confuse others like this. Because then it will become an authoritative statement. It is from Bhagavatam, spoken by Narada. Cannot be wrong.
It is the same with the instruction of the Guru, who is giving to certain people at certain time, in certain circumstances. So, how to determine it if it is a general teaching who can be applied to everybody, or it is just a teaching for this person at this moment?
Well, you have to see under what context things are spoken. So that is, you have to analyze that.
I have a question about the difference between desire and samskara, because you mentioned
What is that?
if we do not act on desires, they will leave. And I was under the impression that desire is connected with and an outcome of samskaras. So, and samskaras are still within us, even if we don't act on them. So,
Yeah, but if you don't act, then they will become weak and weak. They will lose their power. If you act on them, they will remain strong. So you have to learn to neglect them.
So that means with a desire also the samskaras ultimately will leave.
Yeah. Because once you act on desire, then you are pouring again water on those samskaras. If you don't hang on to the desire, then you are starving them.
Krishna will come and sit in the heart of one who is totally free of desires. So in the meantime,
Where is sitting?
where is he? What is the, where does he stand with us? Because most of us, at least myself, I'm not free from desires. Yet at the same time, I do feel something.
Yeah, then he can also reciprocate. He doesn't have to be with you all the time.
I want him with me all the time, but I said I want him with me all the time, but then I'm not yet eligible for that.
That's what I'm saying. He can still reciprocate. He is everywhere anyway. But when he says that he sits, means he becomes available. He will personally reciprocate with the devotee. Otherwise he says that sarvasya chaham hridaya sannivishto, I am sitting in everybody's heart, but indifferently.
He's there, but is not so much.
Not so keen.
Yeah, he's not so much implicated.
Yes.